I'm a rapper, I'm not a poet. Poet, I'm not a rapper. Guess it's opposite there, cause you niggas just got it backwards. Got me sick to my stomach. Go up on my lantern. New trios, Frio, the most terrible tandem. Deliver shock value, but no, not Timberlanding. Critical observation alerting you ambulances. Clap on and clap off. Rap on and rap off. Hard times for hard rhymes, that concrete, that asphalt. If I did look twice, I guess that's her asphalt. May I assist you and score, get my pass out. Matter of fact, it's what you need. Need some rest, you just fatigue. See, technically I'm foul, and Mrs. Wallace, I'm Rashid. Know this beat is a banger, have no reason for anger. If I'm slightly deterred, you know I'm giving the finger. I'm a savage like Corey, but not in need of Topanga. Right like 90 degrees, you in the need of an angle.
Welcome to the Free Lunch Podcast. This is Tight. I got my boy BG with me. How you doing today, sir?
Blessed and highly favored, beloved. How are you today?
Man, I'm doing good, man. But I got some things on my chest today. And I really want to have a deep dive into some serious conversation today.
This is the perfect place for conversation, man.
That's what we do on Free Lunch Podcast. But before we get started, can I do it for the vine?
Do it for the vine.
Guess who's back? Back again. Free lunch back. Tell your friends. Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Da-na-na.
Guess who's back?
Hey. If Cliff Channel don't call, I think I got another means how we can make it, dog.
Well, I'm riding with you, boy. I'm riding with you. So whatever we need to do, let's get it going.
I think American Idol might be our other voice.
That's your calling. That's your purpose. That's what you're passionate about.
The voice.
The voice. Guess who's back? Free lunch back.
We back. But I mean, on the serious tip, I really want to get into this whole, and I don't even want to get no background. I just want to jump right into the topic. You know, I like to try to set it up, but let's just jump right into it.
Let's go.
And let's talk about labels. Let's talk about placing labels on people and how that really simplifies and how people use labels to simplify and justify individuals, things, people, person, places, or things. What nouns?
Right.
How people try to simplify and justify and people. So, and really what got me thinking about this was more along the lines of how labels and how people can place labels on you that can limit to limit who you are and how far you can go.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that, let's just use a job as an example, occupation. So you can have your boss or a colleague or a peer that a superior individual can say, hey, I see Tight or I see BG as this position, and how that limit or how that label can ultimately limit your vertical mobility or your upward mobility. What do you think about just labels in general? Because I know even when we were prepping for today's podcast, we actually got into some deep conversations that hopefully that can transcend what we talked about when we were prepping and actually carry over to today's podcast.
Yeah. So the label is more so just for the person that is the one doing the labeling. And so when they give a term to it, it's really not so much of them really trying to define or describe that actual thing in its totality, but it's more so of them needing a reference point or something that they can refer to that person quickly. And the moment that you do that, like you say, you're taking away from that person that you're labeling, because you're not giving a full reflection of who that person is, what that person stands for, and what that person is bringing to the table. So the label is more so for the person doing the labeling and not the person or the thing that's being labeled. And like you were saying, that by doing that, you kind of create this ceiling on the thing being labeled. You're taking away from that person's and that thing's total meaning, right? And also that label kind of, it may be a way of taking power. If I label you, then I kind of have the power, and I can kind of set the tone for what you're supposed to be doing and who you are. So I agree, man. Labeling is something that, we should, try to stay away from, don't want to be labeled, and then also have to be cautious about how we label people in our own lives.
But you know what you just said, that was actually powerful. I mean, I was just literally thinking the same thing. And we really should call this particular podcast the power of labeling, because labeling, what it does, it takes the power away. It's almost like the term ambition. The term ambition really means to suck life out of.
Mm-hmm.
So you really shouldn't even use the term ambition, and you should use the term you aspire.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people, they'll say they're very ambitious, and really that term means to take the life out of, and that's essentially what labeling is doing. Because when you label, and there's so many examples I hope we cover today around labeling, because what labeling does, it essentially says I can't walk and chew gum at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
as though it limits it limits my complexity. And so the example, I know when we were even discussing this in our own little conversation pre-gaming for the podcast, it was actually three areas I wanted us to talk about. And one of them is even the example I gave is from childhood, right? And so how I was saying that, I might have been tight. I grew up in Mobile, and I might have been tight, or had a certain personality from the time I was living in Mobile until I left to go off to college. But from the time that I've lived in college up until where I'm living at now for the past 15 years, living out of Mobile, I'm not the same person that I originally was.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go back home to visit, some people may see me as tight pre-college, but I've matured and I've grown, and placing that label and putting me in that box kind of limits who I am, versus you spending the time to get to know who I am and get to know what I'm trying to accomplish and where I'm going and how I'm going to fulfill what my purpose is. Then you're limiting who I am, and you're simplifying me, and human beings are more complex than that.
Yeah, and you take away, you fully discredit, what that human being is all about. And so, yeah, and I guess that also goes to, like, when you talk about children and parents and all that kind of stuff, why they say that you need to be careful about what you name your child or what you label your child, because oftentimes that label is kind of reflected in how that child behaves and what that child does. Because they may feel like they are supposed to live up to that label. You have to be watch how you describe children, how you describe people. If you tell somebody that they're dumb, then you've given them that label and you put that on them, right? So labels are a powerful thing, like we talked about, right? And that labeling can be handicapping as well.
Yeah.
So, but labeling is what we do. We're all guilty of it because it makes it so easy for us to refer to that person as a doctor, or that person as, the guy that hangs out on the street, not really even knowing what he's doing on the street, why he's there, what put him in that position. All we know is he's the guy on the street, and that, is what we function by. And that can also keep us from even interacting with the guy because of that label or the way that he's been labeled.
But and that's a good point. And actually, even us having this conversation, I really believe it's something that needs to have some awareness brought to it. Because what I actually believe the podcasts are doing is, in a lot of ways, bringing awareness to issues and topics that that I don't think is really discussed, just whether it's on a daily basis or just in general. Because when I even thought about labeling, and just to give some context behind this whole conversation, I can remember the first time that I personally had this whole idea of labeling being brought to the forefront of my mind, and me becoming aware of it was actually when the girl I was dating at the time, my first love, she actually was like, tight, you don't even know who I am. Like, and I thought I did. And even though I thought I knew who she was, and in a lot of ways I was connected to her and I did know who she was, in a lot of ways I really didn't. And rather than me spending the time to get to know who she was and really understanding what her purpose was, what her calling was, and where she was trying to go, I kind of placed her in a box, which was what a label does. And let me give a perfect example. One of the perfect examples I recall was actually from a pastor, how he described a buzzer. The insect, a buzzer.
Right, right.
And they say that he was watching the Discovery Channel, and it talked about how a buzzer, if you put a buzzer in a box, it was basically, he put the buzzer in a 10 by 10 box, and the buzzer was actually couldn't get out of that box, even though the box had nothing covering the top of it, anything, because a buzzer naturally believes that he needs 12 feet, a running start, and 12 feet before he can fly out of that box. So essentially, and I use that example to say how we'll take a label and we will place people in a box. And for those that are not conscious enough to even aware, they're like that buzzer in that box. They think that because this is the label I've been given, then I'm captivated and I can't fly to that box. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And they think like that buzzer, they need a 12 feet running start to fly out, when all you got to do is flap your wings and fly right out.
Yep. And another area that you see that a lot of time, talking about labeling and ceilings being set, would be in the workplace, because of course we all have, say, like job descriptions and things, job titles, and those are labels. And so when you're in these corporations or you're in these business institutions, you are just that. You are what your job description says you are. And a lot of times your managers and your supervisors will treat you as such, and in turn, like, limits your upward mobility and your progression and your promotion. Because for one, you got this label, and if you don't have that desire to flap your wings, so to say, you'll just stay in that, in your program description and not strive to do anything else.
You have become mentally captivated. You mentally bought into the idea that your job description describes who you are and your purpose on this earth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the moment you mentally prescribe to that is the moment you limit your calling and limit what your purpose is and where you're supposed to be heading.
And you're stuck.
And you're stuck like that buzzer that's in a box with all this space to fly out.
Yeah. And I commend great, like, managers and people that are in that supervisory position that, in spite of all that, do inspire their subordinates or the people that are working up under them to push for promotion and expand what they can do on the job and expand their responsibilities and things like that. But it's kind of sad that that's very rare, because for some strange reason, when we get into these situations, people want to keep us just where we are. They want us to be stuck. They don't want us to to reach higher and move forward or move on. So it's very interesting that we don't have that real push for promotion and things like that. But back to the topic, is those labels that can be used to not only handicap us, but used by other people to hold us down.
But another good example, and not to really go too far fetched, but I really admire is a good example is Nicki Minaj. I was listening to an interview that Nicki Minaj did, and she was talking about her music, and the person that was interviewing her continued to ask her, "Is this a rap? Going to be a rap album, or is it going to be a pop culture album?" She was like, "No, I'm not going to label my music.
Mm-hmm.
It's music. It's like stop trying to place it in a category and just appreciate it for what it's worth." And it's no different than another example we gave when we were kind of pre-gaming for today's show was how we can limit, and then let's use the environment. A kid can look at what we call a bird today prior to him having a name or a label placed on that bird and look at it in amazement. Because if you really think about it, and I actually got this example from watching Oprah Super Soul Sunday with one of her guests actually kind of brought this up, this whole idea of labels as well as more so around the bird. And it talked about how a kid or a young child can look at a bird, not know the name of it, and just look at it in awe. Because if you think about that particular, if you think about the bird, I'm gonna call it a bird since that's what we call it. But if you think about that bird, look at what it's doing. That is God's creation that is really God in motion. If you really think about spirituality and you think about, all the different creations, we even talked about, and we can get into this, about pollination and about the bees and flowers and that whole process. But that kid just looks at that bird and just sees a flying object that's a living creature that's an expression of who God is. But the moment we give it the name bird, it's the moment we take all of that away, and what that kid now sees is a bird versus God in motion.
And that God in motion, and then that particular entity, that bird's function and benefit to the ecosystem, and how important he is to the circle of life.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, keep going.
I mean, that's simply what it is. It's like when you, like you say, when you do that, you subtract all that kind of stuff, and then nobody really knows or really appreciates what that being is, what that being possesses, and what that being has to offer. And so that happens. That happens when you talk about moving from bird to people. If I just label you as, the black boy from Mobile, then I negate everything that you've been able to, do in your life, the people that you've impacted, that you've connected with, and the positivity that you placed on the earth. And that's a disservice to you, and it's a disservice to everyone else, because we all need to be able to understand that. We all need to be able to see it, know about it, and above all, we need to be able to appreciate. And we can appreciate each other better once we step outside of these labels and refrain from putting people in a box and just let them be and show us who they are without the labeling.
Labeling simplifies and justifies someone else's profile that they placed on you versus them taking the and it makes it easy. When I say simplify, it dumbs down the complexity of the human being. Because if you really think about it, we are very complex individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not as simple as we as an individual try to make us out to be. If you was placed on this, which I believe everyone was placed on this earth to to solve a problem. I think that's the best way to say it, right?
Right.
If you could say it's a calling or whatever, but I think there is a solution that you was placed on this earth to solve, like I was. But and once I solved that solution, or but first you have to determine what it is that is you're supposed to be trying to solve, and then once you solve that solution, then that's a very complex thing. It's not as simple as saying that tight solution. I mean, tight was just to do um, I don't know, computer work. Like, no, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. We're complex people.
Right.
No, look at the bird. If okay, let's go back to the bird and the flowers. I can look at I mean, not the bird, but the bees. I can go and look at a bee and call that a bee, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm limiting that bee because what exactly is that bee doing? That bee is doing more than just being a bee.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I totally see what you're saying.
What is that bee doing, BG?
He pollinating the flowers and putting the flowers in a position to grow and replenish. But above that, shit, he making that honey. He making that honey.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
he got a role. We need to know that. We need to know that he more than a bee. He a honey producer.
Yes, and so just because you get up every day, I get up every day and I might go to my occupation, and at my occupation, that description may say, "This is what I'm doing." Know that you are bigger than what that job description is, and even if you're told by an individual or individuals that that they're labeling you, um, whether it's based on the next level or what have you, know that that your whole calling and your purpose is bigger than that.
Take the power. Take the power. Get out of the box and live with no ceilings. And don't be labeled. But if I can, dog, I want to flip this around a little bit. Since we talked about that in terms of empowering people and not being labeled,
Okay.
are there instances to where people label themselves?
Yes, all the time. That's exactly what I'm saying. They label themselves and say that they are their occupation.
Okay,
Yes,
so that
and
does happen.
yes, and when they are labeling themselves, that's another thing too. And I don't want to take away from you flipping it around, but look at how it limits the connection that we have with other individuals.
Hmm.
Because had I listened to the advice of my ex per se, and I believe that everything happens for a reason, and we can discuss what I learned from me and my ex breaking up, and I'm it's fair game. I share whatever, but the thing that I learned, one of the things I learned is how powerful and how getting to know an individual can make that relationship that much closer.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So rather than me putting a label on who you are and me putting a label on what you are, why not spend the time to get to know who that person is and appreciate that person for who they are?
Hmm.
You see, that's deep. But a lot of people don't have the time to or the patience to even or the awareness to even do that.
Yep.
To
Yep.
have the awareness and the patience, or the other to go back to what you were just asking, going back to what you were just asking and talking about. If that person doesn't even know who they are, then you walking up a slippery slope there because you can't even connect with someone if they've limited and labeled themselves as being a lawyer
Uh-huh.
or a doctor or whatever occupation. If you meet somebody, especially in where I live in DC, and you walk up to somebody and they say, "Hey, who are you?" and they identify themselves as their occupation, abort.
Abort mission. Abort mission. I agree. That's the truth. I think that's the truth from no matter where you are. And it's just so much of that people are living behind their label. So they've been labeled or they've taken on this label and their label precedes them. So like you say, when you talk to them, it's not so much of, who they are, is what they are and what they do for a living. And I feel like you, man, like that's a sign of somebody that's gonna be real difficult to get to know who they really are on the inside because the thing of utmost importance to them is their profession or their label. And
But
that
the thing about it is I don't even think, and that's the purpose of this whole podcast, is to bring awareness because I would guarantee you 9 times out of 10, that individual is not even aware enough to know that they identify with their occupation or they identify with something else other than knowing who they really are and what their calling is. You see what I'm saying?
So
Like,
yeah.
I don't even think most people are even aware. Like, that's why I'm hoping that this even podcast just it's almost like when you watch the cartoon and that light bulb come on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes they have that think bubble and sometimes they have that light bulb that'll come on top of their head. And I'm just hoping that light bulb come on off this conversation, be like, man, like that's some real ish.
Well, what is it? What is it that prevents that awareness? Is it is insecurities? Do insecurities lie in there somewhere to where it's, I guess, more beneficial or more attractive for that person to use their label?
No, I'm gonna tell you what prevents them.
What?
He, uh, how they define success.
Okay.
Success, how they define success. So if success to them is based off their occupation, then ultimately that's how they're going to identify with themselves.
Right.
I truly believe that if you think about it, if success to me is having a good job and making a certain amount of money or what have you, then I'm gonna identify myself by showing that I am successful because I'm at a certain level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that. And that's a common thing. That's a common thing too. And that'll definitely be another podcast when we're talking about success and what success means to you individually. Because, like you say, success success is great, and it does a lot of times reflect, what we've been through and the work that we put in and all those type of things. But like everything else, success is only one piece of this puzzle that we call, our being, because more importantly or equally as important to that success that you reached is the story that you tell of leading up to that success. So I kind of like that. I like people that have a story. Success is good. I can appreciate and applaud success, but I really appreciate the person that has a story and is willing to share that story, because I think that does a lot for the ecosystem, for lack of a better word, or the environment, when people are putting their real stories out there, and their testimonies out there on the line for others to maybe look at and observe and learn from. And so I can really value somebody that's willing to go deep and share their story, along with, highlighting their success.
And you know what? Not to get off on the tangent of success, but this kind of ties in line with we're talking about labeling everybody that's listening on the podcast, Free Lunch Podcast. But what really struck with me and the definition that I go by in regards to success was actually coined by Coach John Wooden over at UCLA when he said, "Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing that you did your best to become the best that you're capable of becoming."
Mm-hmm.
Let me say that again. Peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing that you did your best to become the best that you are capable of becoming.
That ain't necessarily measured by money.
But how many people are living by that definition of success? See, if you had more people living by that definition of success, then they wouldn't label themselves based on their occupation.
Yeah.
Talk to me now.
Because it's hard to do that, because that's like really you getting into you say self-satisfaction. So that's like you had some ideas of what you wanted to be personally, and you was aware enough of you had these things set out, and in your success, you were the best at doing that personally. So you can't measure that really can't measure that with a lot of side things. That's kind of like a personal, spiritual reward, success in the definition that you just gave.
And for him to come out and coin that phrase, That alone should tell you that he was a very deep individual,
Yeah.
very deep, and very self-aware of who he is and was. And going back to this whole idea of labeling, I think that if we can understand as individuals, number one, that we are complex and complex human beings, and number two, if we can accept the fact, or number two, don't allow people to put you in that box. Don't allow individuals to limit your success. I think Jay-Z said it best in one of his interviews. I can walk and chew gum at the same. Actually, I kind of understood what Kanye West was saying when he was going on them tangent interviews that he was having with Sway on the Breakfast Club when he was kind of out there. I think his approach wasn't tactful, but I think if you really listen to what he was saying, to summarize, he basically was saying, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. Go back and listen to both interviews that Kanye West did, and go back and listen to the Jay-Z interview that he did on the Breakfast Club. You'll see that message is the same.
Exactly, say the same thing. And basically what they're saying is like I can do all these things and I can be great at all these things.
But the industry, but the thing that got me, BG, about them whole interviews was this was to me an example. Kanye West was basically having a regular person issue. See what I'm saying? He was basically having on a large scale. Basically, the industries were placing a label on him and have been placing a label on him. And what he's been trying to do is break out of that glass ceiling that's been placed on him as only being an artist that can do music. Whereas regular folks like me and you experience this ish every day. And we go to work and we go to our daily career and our daily jobs, and people have placed us labels and placed us in glass ceilings that prevent them from upward mobility. You just
And
face regular people ish.
prevent them from having to acknowledge our greatness. By putting that label in and say, okay, you just gonna be a rapper. You can't be, you can't be a clothing designer. You can't be an audio visual person. You just got to be an artist. They're limiting your greatness now. Now you can't now you can't supersede the establishment. If I put these labels on you, you can't outgrow the establishment and be as powerful or more powerful than where we are and what's been established the years before you. You got to play by this set of rules. And those are regular person's issues every day, because when you start talking about, if they got you pegged, my label would be young black male. They got me pegged, right? And the minute you start doing some non-young black male stuff, then it's like, why are you doing that? Don't do that. You weren't made to do that. You're not capable of doing those things.
Or if you respond the same way that you've seen them respond, but then a label gets placed on. You might see one individual respond a certain way in a meeting, and if you respond that certain way, then because of the ignorance, someone else may say, "Oh, this is the angry guy." At one point and at one time, didn't even have a black quarterback. A label was placed on that individual and say, "Okay, you can only be any of the other 10 positions." Right? Because offense and defense have 11 positions on the field for the women that are listening. You could be any of the other 10 positions, and actually 9, because I don't even think you were smart enough to be the center.
Yeah, I think center was off limits too.
Yes. So you could be any of the 9, and so that's a mental block that we could all put on ourselves, because you can say, okay, only thing I can be at this particular corporation or this particular job is one of these other positions. Well, break through, be a pioneer. That's what be a trailblazer. And in a lot of ways, that's what Kanye West was trying to just say it in the best way.
His approach is renegade. You have to be like that. You have to be willing to kick those doors down and rip through those ceilings and those labels to get to where you need to be. You got to be willing. You got to be willing to do that and be willing to take that criticism that's gonna come or the other labels that's gonna come too. You know, you insubordinate, you're ignorant, you know, you have no tact and all those kind of things. You're gonna get more labels, but you know, you just don't be deterred by those either. Know that they coming and keep pushing through. So yeah, man, like they're everywhere.
But learn to and I don't mean to take away from because you asked this originally, but learn to embrace like getting to know individual and how and how if you don't place labels on people, how you can benefit from the complexity of who they are and how you can grow with that individual. I mean, if Michelle Obama would have said to President Obama that you can only be a community organizer, then they would have limited their growth and their upward mobility to the White House. You see what I'm saying? So get to know in order to build stronger relationships with friends. It's not always about with um, it's not always about with the opposite sex, or if you or if you like the same sex. It's not always with the same sex. You know, it's about developing relationships, getting to know individuals for who they are, and understanding why that individual is in your life, so that both of y'all, or so that all of you all can solve that problem that you were placed on here
Place
to
to
solve.
solve. Place to solve. And
That's all I had, dog. I let you take us
I
and
think we
finish it up.
said it, man. It's like the importance and the power of labeling and what labeling does. And, you know, just kind of based off of the conversation that we've had today between you and I, is that labeling is more detrimental than it is beneficial. Is detrimental to the labeler because, you know, in essence, they're not really getting the opportunity or not providing themselves the opportunity to get to know the thing that they're labeling. You know, they're shortchanging that person, so they don't have the opportunity to experience that. And then the person that is being labeled, of course, they're being handicapped because they're forced to just be boxed into that term that's been used to describe them. And now they're in a situation to not be able to expand and to go deeper into all of the other offerings that they have. So knowing that, you know, we have some work to do. You know, one, you know, we have to limit what we label. We have to really focus on just getting to know the functions and getting to know the person that we meet for who they are and what their being means and how they're really moving. And then on the other side, we have to fight being labeled. We can't put ourselves in a situation to be labeled. And then if we are someone that's trying to place labels on them, we break through those labels and, you know, supersede those labels, prove those labels wrong.
Don't be that buzzer. Don't be like that buzzer in that in that
Yeah,
in
break
that
through
box.
those ceilings, man. Break through those ceilings, jump out of the box and live like that every day because, you know, your meaning to the world and to the globe is more than a box. And so you have to be willing to put that out there.
So I guess the challenge, I guess, and for everybody is next time you see what we call a bird, just look at it and look at what it's actually doing, and understand that that's God in motion, or whatever you call God, your superior being, whatever. Just understand that that is an expression of something bigger, and understand that you are too. We are complex individuals that can walk and chew gum at the same time. That's all
Well,
I had. Can I take us out? Free lunch back. Guess who's back? Guess who's
oh man,
back?
I'm killing
Nah, nah,
myself.
nah, that's hot. The street say that's what? That's hot.
That's hot. That's that fire. That's that flame.
What Dylon say?
What I learn say?
Hot,
Hot fire.
hot. Hey man, how can the people
You know you got all the information. You got all the information for the stuff.
Hey, I got all the information for this stuff. They can reach us at freelunchpodcast@gmail.com. You can reach us on Twitter. We got Free Lunch Pod C. That's Free Lunch Pod C. And we got the Facebook, and that's all I got to say right now. I'm ready to when I get off this, I might start recording some albums.
I think you're ready, dog. I'm with you. Just let me be your road manager. That's all I want.
All right, dog. I got you. Hey, people, we out of here. Love
Thank y'all for the support.
Peace. Thank y'all for the support. Love y'all. Bye.
Charles Barkley, they ain't biting. I'm getting that green broccoli. Properly giving props to the problem. Fulfill prophecy. It gotta be better than that. It gotta be awesome. Obviously, niggas rolling the dice, and this ain't Monopoly. My purpose was to do it on purpose. Fucking apology.